Fill her up.
You're listening to the Gas Digital Network.
On the edge they take the throne, built on bones of those unknown. Counted first, never last, still erased from the past. I am an American loser. No one remembers my name. No legacy and no future. One step behind in the game.
Hey folks, what's going on? It's KP Burke. Welcome back to another episode of American Loser. You keep thinking that we've ended the show because I keep telling you we've ended the show, but guess what? We have upgraded to the big leagues here, folks. This was a New Jersey-based podcast. I want to say thank you so much to my friends at A Shared Universe, but real quickly, let's just get it out there in the open. Very happy to be involved in what I consider the major leagues of podcasting right now. We just joined up with the great Gas Digital Network. We're so happy to be here. They got amazing shows like the classic legendary Legion of Skanks, the Lewis and Zach Show, High Society Radio, and more. All shows I've been a guest on, all shows of people that I genuinely love on it. This is a place where we get to elevate this show, and if it's your first episode checking us out, you're checking us out when we're on steroids right now, okay? And if you've been a loyal listener, thank you so much. I can't wait to show you guys what we're going to do now that we're on the aforementioned steroids. So do me a favor, if you guys want to check out exclusive content over here and just support the network that keeps supporting people like me, it's Gas Digital. Use the promo code LOSER, and you will get a discount on services up front. And there's a ton of great things that are coming on over here. And also, if you're not following me already, it's at KP Burke Sucks over on Instagram. And do me a favor, man. We keep putting out these reels. It's all because of Gas Digital. That's the reason that I'm here. Just a quick shout out to 3 people, and we're getting right on with a crazy, wild topic that you guys might have already guessed. But I have to say thank you to Louis J. Gomez, Ralph Sutton, and our producer, the guy who put a lot of faith in me. He has staked his career on the line here, folks. Let's not let him down. St. Michael Harrington. Thank you so much, guys. Welcome to American Loser. This week's episode, Theodore Kaczynski, also known as the Unabomber. I'll often see a meme on the internet, and it shows like a secluded cabin, and it just says, just give me a secluded cabin in the woods, and this is all I really need. I don't even care about Wi-Fi or money or anything. They say that they would just be happy. I mean, who hasn't really kind of thought that maybe that's their way to get away from it all, is to escape into the dreams of nature? And the reason you're escaping into nature is because you want to get away from the modern world. All right, everybody's talked about it. Has technology gone too far? We don't know. We're still learning that. There's history stuff coming up all the time. These are historical moments that you guys are living through. But who hasn't been troubled a little bit by advancements of technology? And who can argue that despite all of its massive achievements, that we aren't also kind of ruining society simultaneously? I think there's a lot of people that are enjoying the downfall of Western civilization through the prism of technology. And there was a guy way, way ahead of his time that was writing manifestos on this back in the 80s. And again, that happens to be domestic terrorism. Domestic terrorism's probably Hall of Fame, I would say, in Ted Kaczynski over here. Because let's be honest, if it wasn't for the internet, I wouldn't know so many important things. I learned how to cook a poached egg thanks to the internet. That was a big deal for me. That was my COVID activity. When I was alone in the house, I learned how to cook poached eggs thanks to that. All right. And then, but at the same time, the internet's also ruined me because, yes, if you take away the internet, I don't know how to cook a poached egg, but maybe I could learn one day. But because we have the internet, I have seen a naked female with a toilet seat wrapped around her neck while she services several gentlemen callers simultaneously. Now, I doubt I ever would have seen that myself in person. I would have learned the poached egg, but a girl with a toilet seat wrapped around her neck just going to town on fellas, that's internet special. Internet special there, folks. So multiple things are going to be true in this story of losing. And the villain of our story is quite brilliant, very impressive, and almost a little bit of a hero, if you leave out the worst parts of his diabolical efforts in what some would consider an altruistic plan. Okay? I know we're not the normal stuff here on Gas Digital, all right? I had to get in the toilet seat blowjob stuff because we got to keep true to the fan base. We got to be hardcore here, and I love that, and you guys are letting me do that. So trust me, if you're not into the history thing yet, this is just a guy that should have had a movie made about him. In fact, he's had a couple made about him, and I don't think any of them truly capture him because I'm going to be honest with you guys, his story is part Fight Club, it's part Falling Down with Michael Douglas, it's part Fern Gully because he loves the outdoors, folks. He's willing to do a lot of terrorism on behalf of that, which is really what Fern Gully's about when you pay attention. And then also, there's a little bit of young Sheldon mixed in there, too, because we did this kid dirty. So this is a little bit of a dark side of the American dream, because I think a lot of us have dreamt of being a kid like this, and I'm going to kind of explain it here. But we'll start at the end. That's what we like to do here on Loser. We have a little bit of a Quentin Tarantino vibe. Upon the arrest of Theodore Kaczynski, a.k.a. the Unabomber, in 1996, he had been the subject of the largest and most expensive investigation in FBI history. And his manifesto, which we'll get more into later, rings true a little bit more often than anyone would like to admit. And many of the people that hunted him down are just as flawed as him. So it's kind of like a Sopranos thing. There's really no good guy here. If you watch The Sopranos, you have to realize that Ralphie Cifaretto, okay, and I know I'm dating myself with the reference here, but I like to think Sopranos is evergreen. And I'm a North Jersey kid, so it's how we it's the prism we view life through. I hate that. When you watch The Sopranos, you have a guy that you're rooting for a little bit in the show. A lot of people rooted for Tony, some Christopher, but they're all bad guys, right? And the only guy who's actually true to himself is Ralphie Cifaretto, the most evil guy, because he's the only one willing to pretend, he's not willing to pretend, rather, that he's a good dude. And that kind of comes into line with the story here. So a quick way to explain the very complex man known as the Unabomber is one of his quotes here that I love. "Never lose hope. Be persistent and stubborn and never give up. There are many instances in history where apparent losers suddenly turn out to be winners unexpectedly. So you should never conclude all hope is lost." Theodore Kaczynski. Yes, folks, you heard it here first. I was inspired by the Unabomber. He's the reason why I'm still doing this goddamn thing. I got over a decade in comedy. I got about 5-6 years in the podcast game. That motivated me. If you told me, Mike Harrington, if I told you that that was an Adidas commercial, you would believe me, correct?
Just do it, baby.
Just do it. Good old Nikes, man. Now, you could probably convince me that quote was from Bukowski, Tom Waits, even the great Doug Stanhope. But both quotes, and don't worry, there's plenty more later. We have a fun game at the end over here we're going to play. It's from his manifesto. He has a couple of amazing quotes, but he's also, at times, very obviously a disturbed individual. So we're going to play a game at the very end of this called Unabomber or Louis J. Gomez. I found a old Twitter account called Louis J. Gomez Tweets, and we picked out some of our favorite ones that seemed close to Unabomber manifesto material. And then I also snuck in a couple of Ted Kaczynski's creepier things, which those two have something in common, man. And, Louis is a bit of a hero here for everything that he's helped build, everything that he's doing. I think there's no better person to pull comparisons from for this manifesto. But first, we got to start. I got to explain this kid. All right, this kid, poor kid, born in Chicago, 1952, to working-class Polish parents. All right, and we all know a million jokes about Polish people being stupid and everything like that. Weird fun fact, the dumb Polak thing, yes, there's some truth to it. I've met some straight-up morons with Polish heritage. But at the same time, the Germans thought the Polish were dumb because so many of the bombs that the Polish laborers, we say laborers, we mean slaves, the ones that they were making weren't going off because the Poles were actually specifically not building the bombs correctly, leaving parts out and stuff like that. So the concept of a dumb Polak is actually the reason why my grandpa didn't blow up during the Battle of the Bulge. So pretty thankful for dumb Polacks out there. Now again, born in 1952, Teddy is quickly discovered. Teddy's a young man here. Now, some of the photos you guys are seeing, you can tell. Teddy, I wouldn't call him handsome. All right? I wouldn't call him ugly. And he, as a boy, even looks like a 30-something-year-old man. He's got just that going on. You can see it. He's got a big, dumb head, just like I do. I'm allowed to say that. That's kind of, that's my thing. That's my gimmick here. But Teddy's not just highly intelligent. He actually gets to skip the 6th grade after an IQ test reveals that Ted Kaczynski has an IQ of 167. So 167. For comparison's sake, Garry Kasparov, who's considered the world's one of the great chess masters of all time, the youngest chess master, in fact, has an IQ in the 190s. So you're talking about the guy who beat the Deep Blue program, which I'll do an episode about that at some point too. This kid is in 6th grade testing at a level within a few points difference of that. So, of course, what happens with that? I don't know if you guys ever dreamed about being the child prodigy or something like that. I remember wishing I was. I remember when the Windows program would come in and they would just hand pick the kids out there and say, you're going into the elevated classes, and they would just leave my dumb ass there because I can recite stuff from American history. I can write my own material. I can't do math. I truly can't. I also get confused sometimes and lost in New York City, and I have a GPS telling me where to go. So I justifiably was not in those classes. But you get this sense of elitism. And the first thing that I couldn't wait to do when a kid got into the Windows class is I would call him a Windows freak, right? Windows freak, whatever, nerd. And that's exactly what happened to poor Ted Kaczynski. He gets to skip the 6th grade, and what happens is he's getting teased and bullied by older kids. And what he does, he's a shy kid. He's like a young Sheldon type. But instead of, quirky, weird one-liners or anything like that, he winds up finding refuge in mathematics, which is my absolute worst subject. You could find out that I'm being completely honest here, I would be labeled as clinically retarded in mathematics. It's not up for debate. My girlfriend Carly has seen me break out a calculator to figure out the tip on probably a $15 bill. So I can't do it. I'm not good at it. I can't even balance a checkbook. So I hate this kid immediately. I would hate Ted Kaczynski because I'd sit there and be like, this guy's just a dork. But not only is he a math prodigy, but he's pretty good in everything else. He doesn't skip just the 6th grade. He actually skips almost the rest of his high school. They keep him in high school for a couple of years. He gets accepted into Harvard at age 15. Age 15. Mike Harrington, what were you doing at age 15?
Stealing my dad's car.
Mike Harrington was stealing his father's car at age 15. Age 15 for me was around the time frame that Britney Spears' Toxic video came out for me, and you really started to blur the line between music video and softcore porn. That was a big moment for me. So that's what I was doing at age 15. Ted Kaczynski's going to Harvard, and his father just sent him away there. Kid didn't even have a driver's license, and he's in Harvard. Okay, terrifying prospect right there. Again, you want to do the comedic thing and go with a young Sheldon, but he's also getting bullied nonstop, so it's no wonder this kid kind of turned out the way that he did. So Ted's college experience it's not quite a comedy. He does graduate with a BA in mathematics, but this is, I really think, it gets downplayed in a lot of the things in his life the more you read about him. I read this and I couldn't believe what I was reading. I used multiple sources to try to confirm all this, and it's absolutely legitimate. This blew my mind. If you guys have seen any of my reels, listened to the podcast in the past, you know that I have a fascination with the CIA and the things that they're up to. And again, because that's where you can see the dark side of American history and the dark side of American foreign policy. This particular one is pretty bad domestic policy. Poor Ted participates in a psychology study on campus. He's only 16 years old. 16 years old. The study was borderline unethical at the time and later absolutely deemed unethical. And it certainly wouldn't fly in any circles today. This study would tell the students that they would be debating personal philosophy with another student. That would be like me and Mike Harrington sitting down, and we each have to give each other a paper about what we personally believe, what are our fondest memories, what do we think of ourselves in the world, all these vulnerable things. And then at the last minute, the paper gets handed off to a third person. So my girlfriend Carly's in the studio right now with Mike, and she would just come in. Imagine if she walks in and just starts berating Harrington about everything he's ever believed in his life. And you realize this isn't a debate club. This isn't a psychology experiment. It's more so a stress test. They're actually testing people to figure out what the levels of distress they respond to. So again, you're writing your heart and sleeve out on a piece of paper. You're handing it off to a complete stranger in hopes of a friendly debate, right? And boom, just attacking you relentlessly. The professor in charge of this, Henry Murray, who I'm going to get into in a second, Henry Murray said it was vehement. Vehement? I think I'm using the word right. We'll find out. I have, again, a New Jersey education at work here, folks.
Thinking of vehement?
Vehement sweeping attacks. There it is. So I know how to say vehemently, and that's what I do. I'll change the phrasing of the word if I have to try to sound smarter. But he literally said, he goes, I want personal attacks. I want high stress levels here. Now, why is he wanting to do this? Why is he trying to do this? It's because Henry Murray, who is a controversial guy in his own right, is a psychology professor at Harvard prior to World War II. When World War II breaks out, he winds up getting picked up as an intelligence officer. He has the rank of lieutenant colonel, and he works for the OSS. All right, I don't know if anybody else played Medal of Honor video games as a kid, but I certainly did. And the OSS was what you played as, and that was the secret agents for World War II. The OSS, by the way, precursor to the CIA. So if you wanted to know what the CIA was going to get up to, their playbook comes right out of the OSS, which I believe is the Office of Strategic Services. And Henry Murray is a psychology professor who is now working with the OSS. This is what he was actually critical in, and I thought this was fascinating. If you guys have seen Silence of the Lambs, they show that's the first kind of big-time thing you see for an FBI profiler to be kind of that category of a job being something shown as like this is something very interesting. These people are highly brilliant. They're able to figure out and anticipate what a serial killer is going to do. That's what Clarice is all about. That's also what the Michael Mann movie Manhunter dives into, and probably a million shows on CBS and NBC. All those other the bullshit that they're always cranking out. There's almost always an FBI profiler thing, and it's because you have to think like a serial killer. So this study had been around for a little while, the idea of this, and these guys really pioneered a new level of it. And the person that they were in charge of creating a psychological profile on was a mustachioed fellow wearing a Hugo Boss uniform in Berlin known as the Führer. Okay? And it was pretty interesting because they put together this profile from him by interviewing people that knew him, asking specific questions about him, seeing his mannerisms, figuring out what some of his strategies were. And they were able to come up with two major pieces of analysis for this psychoanalysis of Adolf Hitler, which was absolutely crucial to the American war effort, the Allied war effort. They figured out two things. Number one, it was a deeply thorough study, and they concluded that with strong possible conclusions here, that Hitler was secretly homosexual. They actually thought that he might be impotent and that Eva Braun was literally just like a person so that he could try. That was his let's make him seem normal for everybody else. But there was a lot of active gay members in the Nazi party, apparently. Hitler used the word booby to describe a lot of his co-workers, like some of the people he was closest with, which apparently was like slang for kind of the under. So nowadays we'd sit there and they'd just be like, Hitler, he seems like a really tough guy, but he seems to tap his feet at the urinal a couple of times, if you know what I mean. So they conclude that Hitler's probably gay. Look at the uniforms. Make the decision for yourself. Tell me what you guys are thinking. All right? Leave notes in the comment if you believe that one at all. Is this just a propaganda piece as well? We're talking about the precursor of the CIA. Information is misinformation to prove to be disinformation. That's how they work. So all those things being considered, they believed to a certain degree that Hitler was gay, and you can't exactly prove it. We don't know how to prove that one. But they also came up with this one. They accurately predicted that if Germany was losing the war in its final months, that Hitler would more than likely commit suicide rather than be, captured and put on trial or executed. So, yeah, they called that one. Dude, I called it. That's kind of what they're going on over there. It sounds like you're putting in like the betting odds or something like that. What's the over-under on Hitler committing suicide in a bunker? And apparently these guys had it right. They had the inside information. They were the Ace Rothsteins of their time. So, also interesting to mention here is that Murray also obviously is going to return to Harvard while Ted Kaczynski is there. I'm about to get into that here. But he also winds up supervising Timothy Leary. And Timothy Leary, not to be confused with Dennis Leary, but Timothy Leary, a lot of you guys are going to know who he is based off of how often Joe Rogan talks about him, Bill Hicks talks about him. Majority of singer-songwriters wind up speaking about Timothy Leary. And he is a pioneer in psychedelic drugs and research for them. And I'm not advocating for drug use here, folks, but if you want to meet God, take mushrooms and watch the tide change down at Jacksonville Beach with your friend Billy Barnwell. It'll change your life, okay? It certainly did for me. But Timothy Leary was experimenting with LSD, other psychedelics, wanting to learn more about them, about the universe, the ability to connect. And the CIA, because they're kind of a militaristic organization, because they are, they started figuring out how to get into things like mind control. So there is an absolute belief and connection that Henry Murray, this guy who helped do the psychological profile on Hitler, is also a member of a program called MK Ultra. Right? MK Ultra. Don't worry, going to get its own episode. Probably going to call in my buddy Mike Cannon for that one because Mike is no longer deep in the conspiracy wormhole, but he knows a shitload about MK Ultra. So it's hard to pin down a timeline and the reasoning for Murray's intense and unethical studies, the MK-Ultra connections there, psychedelic research, post-war affiliation to national intelligence agencies. The national intelligence agencies are a lot like the mafia. You don't get out. You maybe take on a different role, but you're never out. So you keep your contacts over there, whether they're funding some of Murray's research, we don't really know. But one thing is without a doubt, that aforementioned study where students were absolutely ambushed and their entire life's beliefs were written on a paper, handed to a stranger who then absolutely berated them. And by the way, the closest I can feel to this, Harrington, and I know because you were there for this, if you guys don't know, the reason I get to play in the Gas Digital backyard here is because of the Roast Masters tournament. And the Roast Masters tournament it's one of the best things that ever happened to comedy, I think. It incentivized joke writing. Right now we're in a crowd work frenzy, okay? But the time when joke writing, clean-cut joke writing was pivotal to me because I pride myself on writing jokes, and I got to show up, and then you get guys like Big J and Dave Smith and all these other people. Lewis, obviously, the mastermind of a lot of that. And I got to meet so many people, and I got to showcase what I could do by roasting and being terrible to people. And guess what I did, Mike? I did my own version of this experiment where I deeply researched all the people before I insulted them. But all things considered, that the feeling of when they're returning the jokes onto you and you're bombing and you feel exposed, I will share the video of me getting completely fucking owned at the old stand. One of the worst nights of my life. You just have to sit there and take it while a room full of people laugh at you, as if the nightmare is happening to you, that not only are you public speaking, but you're also naked in a room full of people. That's how I felt. That lasted for 3 rounds, and then the guy bought me a beer afterwards. Ted Kaczynski was doing that same exact thing, and he was in this program for over 200 hours. 200 hours. And he's 16 years old. You think we're going to mess this kid up? I think we did. I think we took a child prodigy and we gave him an axe to grind for the rest of his life, man. So that's over his dorms over in Harvard, I believe, if you guys can see behind me on this one. 200 hours before he's even 18. Ted will leave Harvard. He's going to head over to the University of Michigan, okay? He was accepted to Berkeley, but without an offer for a teaching position. That's why he chose that. Still not a very wealthy guy, but clearly a math genius. Now, his work there gets lauded by professors as some of the greatest mathematical work ever recorded. In fact, some experts said that if Ted had stayed in this field of mathematics, he actually would have had to move on to another field because every theory that he was coming up with was later proven to be absolutely true. So he created truth in math. He's like, this is actually how this works. So he was sticking with problems longer than anybody. He also, by the way, had a IQ of higher than Einstein. I used Gary Kasparov as an early reference there, but he had a higher IQ than Einstein, and he was able to figure this out. He gave a dissertation on boundary functions that is still widely read. People widely read this guy's work. This is a domestic terrorist that we're reading the work of. So don't tell me I can't enjoy Lethal Weapon because of some things Mel Gibson said when he was drunk, okay? There's a bunch of dork professors sitting there just enjoying themselves reading Boundary Functions by a convicted murderer, okay, because his work was that good, all right? This is where it starts to get a little bit strange. Boundary Functions, they said, was absolute genius. His dissertation here, they actually said the only people that could fully appreciate it was about 12 men on Earth could actually fully understand what Ted Kaczynski was talking about. This is high-level IQ. This is genius stuff. This is like watching Dave Attell on stage, knowing that every interaction that seems spontaneous is a planned chess move into a perfectly written joke. He's 10 steps ahead of everybody here. But with that comes a little bit of mental issues. We'll call it mental issues. Ted began to experience what would now be considered, okay, now, when I say now considered, I don't mean, I really truly mean in our current zeitgeist. If you guys don't know what zeitgeist means, zeitgeist is German for spirit of the times. So back in this time frame here, we're talking 60s, 70s, it would have been zeitgeist, baby. Oh, I love it. Now's the time on Sprockets where we dance. But here's what struck me funny on this one. He has gender dysphoria. We would just call it that now. He's having some confused feelings. He begins having vivid sexual fantasies involving himself as a woman. Now, for me, I wonder if that's because of this terrible program where people are just absolutely destroying him and maybe calling him, like making him feel inferior as a man or anything like that. And I don't know how these feelings are going to manifest. And gender dysphoria is it's definitely, I believe it's in the psychology textbooks now as well, too, that they do study this to try to figure out what the phenomenon is. Now, Ted's almost not even debating, he wants to have gender reassignment surgery. And let's just be clear, okay? I think I'm being honest here. I think I'm being fair. They make him pretty good now, okay? They make him pretty good now. A fella can get tricked, if you will, okay? At some point, you're going to realize that the girl you're talking to kind of has a voice like your wrestling coach. But for the most part, they're pretty convincing, okay? And if you're choosing to live your life that way, there's a lot of makeup techniques, all those other things. This is the 1960s. A gender reassignment, even just from a medical angle, is a petrifying thing to think about back then. But Ted is having these fantasies in his head so vivid that he wants to go ahead and have this surgery, and he winds up meeting with a psychiatrist. And at the last minute, when the psychiatrist and him start talking, he decides to avoid the topic entirely. He will not talk about his desire to reassign his gender. He just talks about other different things in there, and then decides when he leaves, he goes, I should kill my psychiatrist. And that's the first time I realized that, you're seeing rage placed at a person, and the person doesn't even know why they're angry. So Ted's got a couple screws coming unloose here. The same thing that creates the brilliance is also what creates some of the chaos. So this is like a pivotal moment in his life. He actually refers to it as himself as a phoenix rising from the ashes of his own burnt self, which is what almost everybody says whenever they have like a weird out-of-body experience. So he cancels this thing, decides maybe he's going to commit violence against this psychiatrist, who, again, just doesn't know what they were doing, right? I like to think that it was just like a poor guy sitting there, so talk to me, Ted, and he won't talk to you at all, and then literally Ted's planning your murder the entire time. So he felt humiliated, embarrassed, and hateful. And then, again, you're starting to see cracks in the psyche here. After a little bit more time working in academia, Teddy abruptly resigns from his position at Berkeley and moves back home with dear old mom and dad. I know a lot of comedians, folks. I have been lucky to be doing this for over a decade. Almost every comic I know has had a moment where they got to move back home with somebody, or they got to take on roommates. They have a decline in life, something that they didn't want to deal with. And when you're the child prodigy who left home at 15 and now you got to move back into your mom's basement, that's a little bit worse than buying a house for a girl in Jacksonville you never should have been engaged to in the first place. Anyway, he's now stuck at home over there, decides that he's going to move on out to Montana. He's still socially shy, highly intelligent, maybe a little bit crazy, and he decides to do the hipster thing and move out to Montana. This is before it was cool, all right? This is before Yellowstone, before Costner and Taylor Sheridan made it a destination. He decides Montana's where he wants to go. So he moves on out there. His goal is to live in a cabin that he made himself. It's going to allow him to read more about things that he cares about, because, again, he solved math for the most part. Math is almost boring to him now at this point. He would hike for days while he was living out in the woods. He's doing this Young Sheldon, Fight Club, Jack London kind of a thing. It's a pretty cool vibe, what he's putting together out there. But he'll ride his bike into town to go read at the library. He's doing odd jobs for cash here and there. And again, heavy reading right now. He winds up reading a book called The Technological Society. And Kaczynski's brother, David, says that this actually became Ted's Bible. So I can tell you guys what my Bible was as a kid, was a book called The Civil War Almanac. That's what got me knee-deep into history. And thank God it was just that and not the Technological Society, because that Technological Society, still a controversial book, still available, by the way. You can check it out. It's a French novel, and it also correctly predicts the downfall of mankind here. So, and that's, again, because of technology. So the effort to get out to Montana is in order to get the hell away from the technological world that he's seen a little bit too much of. You're talking about Harvard, you're talking about Michigan. He winds up actually working at Berkeley at some point or another too, and he just doesn't like this idea. He is very fearful of mind control. He despises the way technology continues to develop. He hates land development because now he's in Montana. This is the part where he gets a little bit weird, and if you didn't think he was already weird, it's going to get weirder. So by reading this book, it emboldens him to change the world around him that he perceives is going in the wrong direction. So the rest of Ted's life is wild. Fight Club, Fern Gully, evil genius, a little bit of Nostradamus in here too, because a lot of his predictions came creepy accurate. He's on a favorite hike of his one day. It usually takes him 2 days to hike from his cabin to this particular spot. And after 2 days of hiking through the woods, Ted Kaczynski notices that there's a road now where his favorite hiking spot was. It was this beautiful valley, and the developers came in and they built a road over there. And Ted goes full crazy, full bonkers. It's time for revenge, okay? He started out small by interfering with neighbors' dogs, right? He was actually poisoning some of the animals. They found animal poison when they eventually did arrest him. Neighbors were always suspicious of him. This is a creepy, kind of homeless-looking guy. No one knows much about him. He doesn't go around and see anybody. And anytime the dogs drink water near, this guy's house, all of a sudden they start getting sick. He actually admits to killing one dog in his manifesto. So his revenge will escalate. This is where it's one of those things. They talk about it in Goodfellas that De Niro's character, Jimmy Conway, whose real name was Jimmy Burke, by the way, not related. I haven't been able to prove that. But they said that he rooted for the bad guys in movies. And I realized there's part of that in myself. I root for the bad guys in pro wrestling. That's when I was growing up watching that. I always thought, didn't matter if he was a good or a bad guy, Razor Ramon was too cool, all right? But that being said, he's doing a lot of strange things over here. And this is almost where you start rooting for him a little bit, because the FBI is going to start chasing this guy. There's a full investigation on him that runs from 1978 to 1995. So we're talking about my parents get married, go on a honeymoon, and then adopt a pseudo-intellectual Irish baby boy in 1987. I should have been able to remember when the Unabomber was in the news, and I kind of do. I feel like there was an episode of The Muppet Show that got canceled. And also, we're going to pull it up too there. Unabomber was in the news for a long time. Norm Macdonald would be talking about him on Weekend Update. SNL covered him quite a bit. I have a very fun tie-in at the end over here for that. But he's going to carry out acts of domestic terrorism that he deems as revenge from 78 to 95. Gets his moniker of the Unabomber. I explain where that comes from in a second. It's kind of like if the Joker was the protagonist of Fern Gully. That's what he's doing here. The FBI attributes 16 bombs to Ted, a decades-long effort that results in 3 deaths. Let's be clear about this. A lot of people like to joke about him and paint him in a hero's light. 3 people died because of this man's actions, and at least 23 people were injured. So the explosives were often sent by mail or hand-delivered. Each device was unique, and almost all of them worked as intended, with specific recipients as designated targets. He still has ethics, folks, all right? This is 100% a true story. It's going to blow your mind on this one. He becomes friends in prison later on in life with Timothy McVeigh, who perpetrated the Oklahoma City bombing, all right? A lot of weird stuff in that story, too, about Timothy McVeigh, if you ever want to get into that one. But Timothy McVeigh, he became friends with him in prison, and he goes, I like Timothy, and Timothy's a good guy, and I think if people gave him a chance, they would actually like him too. The only thing is that I appreciate his bombing as an act of protest against the government, but his was a little bit too inhumane for me, because Ted didn't want to kill innocent people. He wanted to hit specifically chosen targets, things that he thought were going to bring on change. So he's almost doing like a Godfather end of the movie thing where he's taking care of all the problems at once. Some of the targets he actually knows personally, some he does not, but he's disgusted by some of their acts. He has ethics in this very twisted sense of revenge here. Maybe Dexter's a good comparison for him. Maybe that's the one I'll go with. But again, he's making IEDs. I'm a former Navy veteran. IED is improvised explosive device. He picks a lot of these targets based off research he did at the library. So, they always say you got to watch out for the quiet ones. In Ted's case, you were absolutely right. His library card was literally what he was using to acquire the knowledge to help build these homemade bombs, which, by the way, the FBI found completely untraceable. And the only clues they ever found were fake clues that Ted would plant himself in order to throw the investigations off. He's operating at a level. It's law-abiding citizen with Gerard Butler. That's definitely somebody who wanted to paint Unabomber in a more compassionate light. So And also, by the way, he keeps getting better at his job. I just said it's from 78 to 95 that he's on this murder spree run, if you will, of domestic terrorism. The bombs are getting more sophisticated as time goes on, and they're always made with barely scraps. These are homemade bombs, and they provide no forensic evidence aside from the aforementioned fake clues. His bombs are, it's insane. He includes a little piece of wood in almost all of them, which led the FBI to kind of believe that this guy was a eco-warrior, if you will. Okay, so they're trying to figure that one out. And a lot of different groups claim Ted Kaczynski followed their ideology. Anarchists you'll hear about. Libertarians talk about him a little bit. Right-wingers enjoy him because he shit on the left wing so hard, liberals. But really, he rejected everybody. He had a beef with everybody when you read his full manifesto. The name Unabomber will actually come from the task force at the FBI that eventually had over 150 agents involved searching for the man they referred to as the university and airline bomber. That was a lot of his early attacks was at universities. He would go after heads of psychology departments or tech departments. And then there was one airline bomb that he put out that the bomb did go off, but it didn't go off as intended. And Kaczynski was actually grateful for that because he thought that was his most unethical attack. So he was very happy that he only harmed a few people and that the plane itself didn't explode. He did threaten to blow up a couple of planes in air, but he had a lot of threats. And we'll get to where these threats are coming from in a second here. But the university and airline bomber shortened that down to Unabomber. Ted targeted airline CEOs. Luigi Mangione kind of in the news here again. He's getting a hero's welcome. I don't know if Ted would. That's what a good-looking face will get you, by the way, folks. A good-looking face will get you somewhere. Luigi probably being paraded around as a hero certain places. Ted Kaczynski looked a little bit more like the Geico caveman, so not really a looker. Old Unabomber Ted there. It's unfortunate. If I saw Ted Kaczynski in here, I would just assume it was a new intern you had hired, Harrington. I really think that. So Ted targets all these people, people working in advanced STEM. The task force at the FBI is created in 1979, but it's not until Ted's bomb in Salt Lake City in 1985 that a description of the infamous Unabomber would appear in this now semi-comical sketch. It's a drawing of a man, literally just a hand, and he's wearing a hoodie and a mustache and aviator sunglasses. And it kind of makes me laugh because that's all it was. I'm not going to lie to you guys. That was a KP Burke Halloween costume for a couple of years. I had a fake mustache. I had aviators. I put on a hoodie, went to a couple of parties, and they'd say, "Who were you?" And I was like, I would just have a tag that said Unabomber on me. And then I would just get blackout drunk. I don't drink anymore, man, but it's... I always wondered if the Unabomber costume was going to catch up to me, so it's fun that we're bringing it up through what I hope is going to be a massive success of a podcast here. In 1994, Ted is successful in what he refers to as a revenge killing of CEO Thomas J. Mosser. Okay, Mosser, by the way, lived in New Jersey. So we have a theory on the show that New Jersey is the inadvertent center of the universe. Okay, my theory's always been if you look at ass cheeks, right? Look at the ass cheeks on a man or a woman, and you make one ass cheek New York, and you make one ass cheek Philadelphia, right? And then you just say Jersey's the shitty part in the middle, right? That's kind of how I feel about it, right? I love being from there, but it is what it is. And Jersey's where all the action is, unfortunately. So an ass is a great thing, but it's used for one certain thing. That's getting shit out of your system. And New Jersey is reluctantly the center of the universe. So, of course, we had a Jersey tie-in for this one. What this guy did, Thomas J. Mosser, he was the head of a public relations company out of New York. And he had helped repair the image, public relations type work, which, by the way, was founded by Edward Bernays. It used to be called Propaganda, and then we just did a name switch. I've done a reel on that one, too, folks. Check it out. It's the birth of propaganda. It's America's Minister of Propaganda. That's what public relations is now. We have a softer, nicer idea of it. But essentially, this public relations firm was hired in order to help Exxon after the infamous Exxon Valdez spill that horrified environmentally friendly Ted Kaczynski. And he goes, "You bastards you're going to find a way to spin this. You aren't going to stand trial for this. You're going to pay absolute bare minimum damage. You're getting a bomb to your house, buddy." And Thomas J. Mosser, unfortunately, is one of the 3 people killed by Ted Kaczynski. The bomb works perfectly, delivered to his New Jersey home. He is, I believe, the only person who was killed by that bomb. He will also kill the head of a timber lobbying group named Gilbert Brent Murray. And in a weird twist, the bomb was sent to William Dennison, who was the former president of this lobbyist organization for the timber business, but had since retired. So it was sent to Murray instead, in what I would probably think is the worst welcoming basket of all time you could ever receive. You know, imagine one of the producers here at Gas. They're saying like, "Hey, I'm taking over on a Godfrey show right now," and then a piece of hate mail that has a bomb in it is sent to the producer of that, and then the poor intern just opens it up. He goes, "Oh, cool, we're starting to get noticed here. We're really making boom, done." So that's what got this poor guy. He might have not even had anything to do with. He might have had a very liberal, eco-friendly idea of what to do in the timber industry, but he never got time to find out because Teddy dropped him as well. So that's another victim, an actual murder victim of Ted Kaczynski. In 1995, keep in mind, I'm alive. I'm moving around now. I'm in school. Ted got one of his wishes, too. Ted, who is still operating without major clues about his identity being discovered, begins writing to news outlets. By the way, my book is available on Amazon, okay? So I know how hard it is to get published, buddy. He winds up writing his manifesto, and he demands that a major publication puts it into print for him, and it's called Industrial Society and Its Future. You can read this PDF. It is available. I suggest you check it out, and let me know when you guys get creeped out, because the man is making some valid points. You can disagree with what he's doing and his, terrorism, which I think is pretty easy to disavow. I kind of lean libertarian on a lot of stuff. They have a non-aggression principle that makes sense to me. I don't want to kill anybody, but I do want to get my point across sometimes. Industrial Society and Its Future is demanded by Kaczynski to be printed in a major publication. For reference, this is a 35,000-word essay that is still being studied to this day and at times is eerily accurate and unsettling. In his demands, he offers, this is a peace offering from Ted Kaczynski. They haven't been able to catch him for decades at this point. The FBI has no idea. I think the only thing they figured out is that he's probably from the Chicago area because of some of the slang that he's using, right? He's probably mentioning certain things in some of these writings. And the idea that they have is that he wants this thing published, and he offers you, he goes, "Guys, I'll stop bombing people. Print my manifesto. I want people to read what I have to write." And a lot of people are against this. They don't want to put it out there. We're not going to celebrate a terrorist. We're not going to negotiate with a terrorist. Honest to God, too, Harrington, what if this guy, if he was around today, Ted Kaczynski would just have a podcast, and it would just be him and Michael Malice talking for like hours? I feel like that's probably what it would have been.
Yeah, I mean, the question is, right, would he be extroverted enough to be able to get a show going consistently? You know what I mean?
Well, he certainly, I'll tell you what, he reminds me of my friend Chris Buck, who's one of the finest comedians I've ever worked with. Buck is an absolute genius and can talk to you at length about almost anything. But if you put a microphone in front of his face and a camera and say, "Hey, man, don't do your act, just be you right now," he just disappears in himself. So I do think you're right about that.
If you can write a 35,000-word manifesto, you're not built for talking to people.
That's a fair point, too, man. I should actually counted how many words this episode was and figured out how close I came to manifesto. But he winds up having this thing. He wants it published, and this is what he's going to do. He could have just started a podcast instead, but in this time frame, printed word is the way to get your word out. The groundwork is set for a ceasefire in his one-man war against the machine if his manifesto is published in full. The FBI and Attorney General Janet Reno, more on her and Ted's weird connection later, are hesitant to publish this, but they hope that the widespread circulation might help people identify the killer. Okay? Possibly even a family member might recognize the writing and turn him in. Worth noting here, Ted's father, if you want to talk about mental illness and the way that it comes down and is passed down generationally, Ted's father committed suicide in 1990 after a battle with terminal lung cancer. He realized that he was just going to have no quality of life, sat down with his family, made the decision to kill himself, even visited Ted in Montana. Whether he knew or not anything about the bombs, we don't know, but he was impressed with the way that his son was living out in the woods. So Ted wanted it to be published by the New York Times or the Washington Post, but a new option has arrived. Ted went on an episode of Call Her Daddy and revealed all to Alex Cooper in a tell-all interview. I'm just fucking with you. All right, I'm just kidding. Imagine Call Her Daddy having the Unabomber in and it's just her sitting there, and you have to plug an Alex Earl product or something like that halfway through the show, and it's my manifesto is really about the downfall of society. It's like we're going to talk about Bonnie Blue right now. Bonnie Blue's in the news, so. Interestingly enough, the Bonnie Blue reference is not out of the blue, folks. It's worth mentioning here that he wants it to be in the New York Times or the Washington Post, which he considers to be prominent publications. What winds up happening, though, he is horrified. Ted Kaczynski is horrified because the biggest publication that is like, get it to me now and let's do this, is Penthouse. Yes, Penthouse. Penthouse Playmates of the Year, all that other stuff. These are all Penthouse Pet of the Year. Well, I forget what they even did with that one. Penthouse was, if you got a Playboy back in the day, you would sit there and be like, all right, we're seeing a famous celebrity naked. I remember Sable from WWF being the one that everybody had to have. Penthouse was like, no way. No way in hell. That was the filth magazine. Larry Flint was Hustler. That was the other really rough one. But Penthouse is all about printing this thing. Ted Kaczynski finds out that it might get published, but it's going to be in Penthouse. He's horrified by this, and he goes, if Penthouse publishes this, I'll let it happen, but I reserve the right to plant one more bomb designed to kill people. So they're like, hey, Penthouse, the blood will be on your hands, okay? The blood will... And by the way, that's a nutso one too, right? You're sitting there, you want to read the Unabomber's manifesto. He's talking about how technology has gone too far, but then one page over is Tara Patrick using a vibrator on herself. It's a tough sell, Mike. It's a tough sell. So the WAPO, short for Washington Post, not wet-ass pussy, eventually does publish this manifesto in full. So the Washington Post, a paper that's controversial but is also known for some of the most important moments in journalism, good and bad, let's be clear. The publishing of the manifesto works out in a couple of different ways. It helped later confirm the identity of Ted, who was using the initials FC, or Freedom Club, on bombs as trace clues, but it also attracted attention from people who understood his intentions, and even though they were against the violence, they recognized the brilliance of his writing. There's a lot of people that study philosophy that put him up there with like Rousseau and a couple of the other, he's
Nietzsche,
really one.
Gomez.
He's one, honest to God, he is one of the preeminent guys from this era because he's a math major who then figured this out. So you can study Aristotle, Socrates, Rousseau, Locke, Hobbes, and Ted Kaczynski, right? That's a modern philosopher. We talk about that all the time. But when it comes down to it, you can understand, you have to admit one thing when you're reading his manifesto. He's either a madman genius or a genius madman, and the question is really, where exactly is the difference? You guys think that there's a difference on that one? There's a Joker quality where you're like, all right, Joker actually checks out as just a full-on anarchist. Right? So he's being consistently logical here, but he's also doing a lot of bad stuff. So where do you draw the line? Tell me in the comments where you guys draw the line. If he had never actually killed somebody, could we just openly call him a hero? Or, where's the line for you guys? Where's your moral code to kind of come in on this one? So this is where we introduce somebody, and this is what I was talking about earlier. He's a flawed guy, Ted Kaczynski, but one of the people that helped take him down is just as flawed and just as awful. And of course, I'm talking about Janet Reno. Janet Reno's hope of identifying Ted was partially realized, but also due to her errors in the recent Ruby Ridge case, which I didn't realize I had lived through. I read about Ruby Ridge and I was like, how did I not know about this? And then I realized it was because the Yankees were starting to make the playoffs, so I wasn't paying attention to shit else in my life. I was also young. I was born in 87, folks. So here's what we noticed. Ruby Ridge, I will do an episode on that one. I think I have a guest in mind I want to bring in who's also fascinated about it. Ruby Ridge was a bad case, and that was where the Attorney General and the ATF and the FBI and other agencies, three-letter agencies, got involved in this one. But unfortunately, Ruby Ridge people were murdered. People were absolutely murdered by that. And the fear was that, and this is now Ted's brother, David Kaczynski, who has a private detective following his brother around, trying to get information on him, because he's afraid. He goes, I think my brother might be the Unabomber. And when they printed the manifesto, that's when they started comparing handwriting from the handwritten letters that David Kaczynski had provided to them. And Kaczynski was saying, he goes, you cannot do a Ruby Ridge on him. He believes this stuff. He'll blow himself up. He'll blow you guys up. Or you bastards will kill him. That's really what it was. He wanted a peaceful way. He goes, my brother needs help, not handcuffs. That's what he was trying to say. So Janet Reno is able to figure this out. Her plan works. They decide to get it published in the Washington Post, and they're starting to find all these different things. Those handwritten letters become a huge part of them gathering enough information to now secure a search warrant. And the FBI will arrest Ted at his cabin in Montana on April 3rd, 1996. 1996. I am 9 years old at this time. Okay, and I didn't realize what a pivotal moment that this was going to be in American history. A lot of crazy things going on here. 1996, also, mind you, Derek Jeter's rookie year. I was not paying attention, folks. All right? I was wearing a Paul O'Neill jersey and thinking that I was going to be a right fielder for the New York Yankees one day. That's really what I thought at the time. So then you figure out you're going to be 5'9" and 40 pounds overweight your whole life, and you just kind of give up on sports. But at this time, I hadn't yet. So the Unabomber one.
Wasn't it the same year as the 96 bombing at the Atlanta Olympics?
So you have that going on as well. And then also earlier, 3 years earlier, I believe, the 93 bombing of the World Trade Center, which, by the way, one of the main culprits in that also becomes friends with Ted in prison at the Supermax that he's held at in Colorado. They wind up arresting him at his cabin. The unkempt-looking Ted, again, he truly does look like, we saw him as a boy. He wasn't a handsome boy. I'm not going to say that. But you see him, how he looks right there. That's actually almost a sexy photo of him right there, Harrington. Damn. But the original, like his mugshot photo that they have, he looks like the Geico caveman. I literally think of the Unabomber every time I see a Geico commercial. Maybe it says something more about me than anything else. They take him into custody. I believe he goes peacefully. As they're going around his cabin, which the FBI, by the way, has recreated a perfect image of. You can visit that, I believe, at the FBI Museum. You can see his exact cabin. He lived in almost nothing. If you think a studio apartment in New York City is shitty, go spend a weekend at old Uncle Teddy's cabin out in Montana, and you'll come running back to that $2,000 a month studio apartment where you have to cook in your bathroom. He's taken into the custody over here, and there's actually people, first of all, they find 40,000 pages of journal writings. They find bomb-making materials, and according to the FBI, who we know we can absolutely trust, okay, they swear that they found one live bomb. So Ted the ceasefire was in, Washington Post printed his manifesto, but I think he just sat there and he goes, let me have one last bomb just in case something needs to go down over here. Because of his time that he was teaching at Berkeley, they tried blaming the Zodiac Killer fiasco on Ted Kaczynski. Once he's in prison and he's not killing people, that's where a sympathy actually starts to build up for him because he goes, I'm not crazy. They keep saying I'm crazy. They're saying that for some sort of political clout here. I never killed the Zodiac people. I would never do that. My bombs were intended to kill just the people that were opening them. I'm glad that my airplane bomb didn't go off. He's working, again, he's a strange case where he has ethics. So ethics was coming through on this guy. People are talking about MK Ultra with him. They're wondering if he was brainwashed by the CIA. There's all sorts of other stuff going on here. The Zodiac Killer thing was coincidental in the timeline that he was out there during some of those killings. But as folks, we all know, the Zodiac Killer is Ted Cruz. That's been proven. I'm pretty sure that's been proven. I'm looking at my girlfriend right now. We're going to have to beep Ted Cruz out of this episode too, aren't we? These are jokes, folks. I got to tell jokes during this thing. It's too dry, too upsetting of a topic sometimes, but I want to give you information, and I'm going to give you jokes along the way. It's what we're going to do. This is interesting. Ted is controversially diagnosed as a schizophrenic. And by the way, when a woman was being a little too problematic back in the day, they would say that she was schizophrenic, and then they would have a lobotomy done on her so she would be a little bit more submissive. So the concept of the Stepford Wives is actually almost a comedy on that whole phenomenon of, hey, you know what your wife needs? You're not incompatible with her or not listening to her needs. She just needs an ice pick through the eye, and then she'll be so much calmer, folks, which is why I'm glad I take Klonopin instead. That's been much better than an ice pick to the eye for me. That being said, his lawyers, his defense team comes in and they say, listen, we're going to say you're insane. It's going to help you. You're going to get an insanity defense. You're probably going to do jail time, but we're going to get the death penalty taken off the table. And Ted refuses the idea. He goes, I'm not insane. I know exactly what I did. I know exactly why I did it. I'm right. Read my manifesto. He does actually wind up attempting to take his own life, though, in prison when he realizes things are going bad. He tries to hire a very famous lawyer who had helped get a bunch of civil rights leaders acquitted from charges. And they can't actually, they don't allow him as his own legal defense here. So they bar him from even getting that lawyer hired. The issue now is that they have to figure out what's going to happen here. He survives his suicide attempt, but he pleads guilty to all the charges and rejects the diagnosis of insanity, calling it just a political tool. And in 1998, Ted Kaczynski, former child prodigy, was sentenced to life without the possibility of parole in his new home of the Supermax prison in Colorado. As I mentioned before, Ted will befriend Oklahoma City bomber Timothy McVeigh and Ramzi Youssef, one of the perpetrators of the 1993 World Trade Center bombing. And by the way, Rami Youssef was the bomber in 1993, not to be confused with Cat Stevens. Cat Stevens, Youssef Islam. So, ooh, baby, baby, it's a wild world. I mean, they had lots to talk about, lots in common, a lot of time on their hands, too. And like I said, Ted actually said one thing. He goes, Timothy McVeigh is a nice guy. He picked the wrong type of a protest for his violence. If you want to shock the system, you shouldn't have to kill innocent people in the process of it. And in Ted's mind, the people that he was killing were not innocent. They were complicit in crimes against his idea of how the world should be. Now, Ted winds up getting diagnosed with rectal cancer, so he's literally bleeding out of his ass for the final years of his life over here. He decides to commit suicide in prison in 2023, hangs himself by his shoelaces, and dies at the age of 81. Now, it's 2023, Harrington, so you know what that means. It was suicide, but also a COVID comorbidity. That's probably what they put down there. One more conspiracy to just ruin Ted's legacy.
Are we sure he wasn't carradine out?
Yeah, he might have been carradine. That might have been full carradine. He's sitting there. But I wonder what he was thinking about. He was probably sitting there thinking, but he goes, I wonder if they let him watch Fern Gully. Do you think they let him watch that? And he's sitting there, he goes, you guys get me. You guys understand me. Thank you. Thank you, Robin Williams. Oh, that's a sick one, too. I forgot. That's how Williams did himself in, too, man. God, maybe that's what the price of true brilliance is. I think we would all agree Robin Williams is brilliant on a level that can't be comprehended, because we don't have another Robin Williams. There's never been another one. The closest thing we have is Jim Carrey, and he goes through a lot of depression stuff too. So the burden of brilliance seems to be constant depression, which is how I know I'm not a genius, because I'm not depressed anymore. That's when I figured it out. I was like, oh, maybe I'm a genius. And you're like, nope, I'm happy now. We figured it out. Thank you, Klonopin and Alp nicotine pouches. He did die in prison in 2023, which I made a joke when it first happened. I tweeted out, I said, it's going to be truly tragic for my family as we celebrate our first Thanksgiving without the Unabomber. And it got a mixed result. Some people are like, dude, that's hilarious, man, or Uncle Teddy or anything like that. I used to always joke that he was my uncle. I say, because I'm adopted. I talk about it on stage. So I was like, he might be. I don't know. We've confirmed he's not, by the way. His works are still being revisited, and his writings have been intriguing to new audiences. So he's actually got, if you watch the show Watchmen, which I did not, my understanding is that my favorite character from the movie, Rorschach, has a group of followers that are worshiping him and trying to carry out works in his name, that they take his philosophy and try to apply it because he's a fallen hero to them. And there's a lot of people, I think they're called Neo-Luddites, and they're trying to say that Kaczynski was a hero, because a lot of his quotes were pretty trippy here. But they're still going over some of his points because a lot of his points were brilliant. So Ted, I don't know how he would feel about his current reception in modern history. I think the more modern the world got, the worse things got. I think he would probably be appalled by the idea of Twitter, where it's like, hang on, they're reading your minds on Twitter, and it's because you're posting on there and giving your mind to them for free, and you're chasing clout. My most important point here, folks, is that this is my fun little weird connection. I had a part about Janet Reno and Ted Kaczynski being connected. And obviously she's the attorney general in response to, issuing the search warrants and the search efforts to then secure his arrest and make sure that he spent the rest of his life in prison. But I thought a weird tie-in happened over here. As a kid who watched a shitload of SNL back in the day, these two people were both played by Will Ferrell in separate SNL sketches. Will Ferrell plays in one of the funniest sketches I've ever seen now that I have the context for it. It's the Harvard reunion, and it's a bunch of Ivy League guys sitting there pipes in hand, also, oh, how are you? I'm working on my dissertation. And then Will Ferrell comes in, full beard, crazy unkempt hair, orange jumpsuit with 2 U.S. Marshals on side by side. And they're saying, oh, look, it's Ted Kaczynski. Ted, what have you been up to? And Will Ferrell's opening line, he goes, lot of writing. I thought it was the funniest thing ever. And then it'll never not be funny, even if you don't know who Janet Reno is. Will Ferrell played Janet Reno in recurring sketches called Janet Reno's Dance Party, where it was a spoof of the MTV dance party shows. But it's Janet Reno, who was a butcher for so many things, honest to God, a cold-blooded killer in a lot of ways. She didn't kill anybody herself, but her pen certainly did a lot of damage. And it's just Will Ferrell dressed up as her. I think she even boxes Giuliani at some point and gives him a low blow on the show. Like, I couldn't believe it, but that's what my memory brought me back to. And in a very weird way, those sketches made me aware of who Janet Reno and Ted Kaczynski were. This is growing, folks. We're back in it. If you're an old school listener and you're coming back into the fold, welcome to the big leagues. And if this is your first exposure, I hope you guys enjoyed the story of the Unabomber, Theodore Kaczynski, American Loser.
On the edge they take the throne, built on bones of those unknown. Coming first, never last, still erased from the past.